So next on our agenda is another riveting Freiburg bill, House File 3363. This is probably the most riveting. 3363, right? No?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that House.
Oh, okay, pardon.
Oh, sorry.
So it is 3362.
No, actually, I think the agenda calls for 3363 next.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So before us, members, is House File 3363. Chair Freiberg, to your motion.
Yep, thank you. I will move House File 3363 be recommended to be re-referred to the Judiciary Committee. There was one late-breaking amendment to this that Co-Chair Quam and I discussed earlier today that is being handed out right now. I think we'll probably take it up last so I can explain it at that point.
Okay.
But I did want to draw members' attention to it. It's also been posted on the committee website. That's the A14 amendment for those who are interested.
Okay.
So if you'd like, Madam Chair, I could describe the bill.
Yeah, let's wait until they figure this out. Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, so as a reminder, committee, we are on House File 3363. To the chair.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. I developed this bill in consultation with Campaign Finance Board Director Jeff Sigurdson after the events of this past June. And I don't really want to revisit those events in committee. I honestly am not sure how well I'd keep it together if I did. I certainly don't want to platform a murderer, but suffice it to say that the public availability of the home addresses of many legislators put our safety at risk in the heightened political environment we find ourselves in. There are many locations where our private data might be available, and there are other bills that address some of those locations. But this bill addresses one location within the jurisdiction of this committee, the Campaign Finance Board, or the CFB. You might hear that abbreviation as part of this committee as well. Sort of as I understand it, and I know Director Sigurdson is here as well, and he's available for questions if any come up. Immediately after the events of June 14th, the Campaign Finance Board pulled down candidate addresses from places like the committee registration page. But there were other spots within the Campaign Finance Board website where our information might still be available, and the Campaign Finance Board felt legislation would help address those locations as well as making their actions of June permanent. So that's what this bill does. The bill affects legislators directly, so I didn't request anybody to testify on this bill. I thought there might be a lot of committee discussion, so I thought it was important that we have plenty of time for that. You know, I don't know if this might be an appropriate time for you to ask if there's any members of the public who wish to testify, but I don't have any testifiers prepared.
Okay, thank you. As is custom, are there members of the audience here who would like to testify on this bill? Okay, so seeing none, we're going to move to member discussion. There are a number of amendments that, yeah.
Yeah, it might make sense, Madam Vice Chair, to go through the amendments first, and I can, it might be helpful if I just kind of provide a little background on why there's so many of them.
Sure.
So the Senate heard this bill last week, and they adopted an extensive delete everything amendment that made some changes to the language, and it also added in some new issues. I think there's merit to some of the changes they made, but I wasn't totally sure where the committee was with it, and it did expand the scope of the bill beyond kind of the initial intent of just addressing Campaign Finance Board website issues. So at the risk of making this more complicated, I asked staff to split up kind of some of the Senate amendment into several smaller amendments so that the committee could consider the issues individually. So the first, I believe the first 9 amendments are those amendments. I don't know that I'd exactly call them authors' amendments, but I did want to bring them forward for purposes of discussion. And if members have any questions, I can respond to those, or I could just move directly into the amendments if you wish. And then we'll have time for discussion on the bill afterwards, after the amendment discussion has happened too.
So you want members to ask general questions now, and members will be able to ask individualized questions for each amendment as we consider them. Are there any general questions on this package of amendments? Okay, well, let's move to,
Madam,
Representative Coulter?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was involved in another discussion. Is the idea, so are we taking these amendments for discussion individually, or was this the opportunity to discuss all of the amendments collectively?
Chair Freiberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Coulter. My intention was to move the amendments individually so
Okay.
that we could have discrete discussions on each topic.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, my question was just whether there were general questions all about the amendments. But with that, and Representative Altendorf? Okay. So with that, we'll move to the A1.
Thank you. So I will move the A1 amendment. So this, well, actually, it might make sense, I know Mr. Gehring put in a lot of effort into these. It might make sense to have him sort of summarize the amendments, at least the first 9 amendments.
Okay, so Chair Freiberg has moved the A1 amendment, and the request is, Mr. Gehring, would you please explain the A1 for the members?
Sure. Madam Chair, the A1 amendment is a series of sections that largely, let's say, adds structural security devices and security services to the definition of non-campaign disbursement. And there are some conforming changes along with that addition throughout the amendment that have to do with definitions and how these kinds of expenses count towards contribution limits and other items. But the bulk of the amendment is about the new authority for campaigns to purchase those items. Compared to the Senate version, if you're keeping track with the Senate engrossment, I would just note one difference here, which is that in this version of the amendment, it excludes a requirement in the Senate version where the board would have to determine whether or not the addition of security devices would add to the value of property. This instead just requires that the board determine that the devices are being purchased solely to provide security.
Thank you, Mr. Gehring. Is there a member discussion on the A1? Representative McDonald.
thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the author, Representative, or Chair. On the second page of your amendment, 4.11 to 4.12, services obtained from a relative or business owned by a relative within third degree of consanguinity of an official or candidate. Hey, was that a correct word, right? Yeah, that was good. Can you explain that particular line? Not the word, but the 4.11 to 4.12.
Chair Freiberg.
Thank you. I really appreciate the question, Chair McDonald. This brings me back to my law school days and taking property classes. The word consanguinity is one that came up in, I remember one of the classes there. I might defer to nonpartisan staff to, I want to say the third degree of consanguinity, is that first nobody closer than a first cousin, Mr. Gehring?
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, Representative Freiberg, I believe that's correct. So it's effectively the third degree of family relationship. But I would need to look it up to be sure.
Chair Freiberg.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate also, oh, this is dangerous, but this is Senate language. I could see the Senate being fans of words like consanguinity.
Further questions?
Oh, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I
Rep-
wasn't
no.
finished. So,
I
Chair
was going
Freiberg-
back to you for clarity. That's why, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
that's all right. Actually, that word being defined, does this amendment prohibit then a member from using a second or third or even first cousin?
Thank you, Representative Chair McDonald. I might defer to, it is a modification of the definition of security services. This amendment adds security services to the list of items that can be used, that are considered non-campaign expenditures, so they don't count against the limit. But, so it doesn't prohibit it, but it does say if you can't declare it a campaign expense if you're paying for services provided by your brother, for example. Is that an accurate statement? Yeah, Mr. Gehring's nodding.
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, Representative Freiberg, that's correct. So this is an exclusion from the definition of security services. So if the way I read it, if a candidate purchased security services from a close relative within that third degree of relationship, then they wouldn't be eligible to report that as a non-campaign disbursement.
Representative McDonald.
So then my home, which is protected by Burns Security and is my studio and many other business and families in Wright County, Carver County, Scott, and many others, who is a relative of mine, I would, this wouldn't apply. I would still be able to have my cousin, Burns Security, just a shout out to the business, utilize them to secure my home and business. I presume this would not apply in that scenario because I think it's, Tom is a second cousin once removed.
Chair Freiberg.
Now, these are important questions.
Okay, with the clarification that this is your second cousin
Consanguinity.
once removed, Chair McDonald, I believe you could even declare this a expenditure because I don't think that is within the third degree of consanguinity. But, you know, even if it were, again, as I said, it wouldn't prohibit it. It would just limit your ability to declare it to be a non-campaign expenditure.
Representative McDonald.
Fascinating. I'm not sure I can support this amendment.
Okay, further discussion on the A1. Okay, Chair Freiberg, any last words?
No.
Okay, so the A1 is before the committee. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Well, the ayes have it. The A1 is adopted. Okay, so we're moving on to the A2. Chair Freiberg?
Thank you. The A2 deals with data classification of street addresses on reports and statements filed with the Campaign Finance Board. I don't know if Mr. Gehring has any clarification beyond that.
Mr. Gehring?
Madam Chair, committee members, I don't have any particular clarification. I think it's accurate. This is providing for classification of reports that are going to the Campaign Finance Board. One distinction between the Senate version and the House and this proposal is that the Senate version has a more narrow approach to the types of reports that would be covered. The House version of the bill with this amendment would cover all types of reports and statements filed with the board.
Is there member discussion on this amendment? Chair Freiberg, any other thoughts?
Nope. It seems logical to me, so I'd encourage members to support it.
Okay, all in favor of the A2 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the A2 is adopted. Okay, so before us, we have the A3 amendment. Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the A3 amendment. So this amendment would remove public official addresses from lobbyist gift reports, and if there's any additional clarification, Mr. Gehring could provide it.
Okay, is there member discussion on the A3? Or I guess, Chair Freiberg, would you like Mr. Gehring to give a summary of the A3?
Do you think, he's kind of shaking his head. I'm gathering maybe
Okay.
my summary was sufficient.
Okay, I agree as well. So all in favor of the A3? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the A3 is adopted. Before us, Chair Freiberg moves the A4 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move the A4. This relates to addresses related to expenditures reported on campaign reports. It does not change address reporting for contributors to campaigns. And I know there is a GOP amendment to this one as well. So maybe if, I don't know, Mr. Gehring could indicate if he thinks I should provide, or if he can provide more of a summary of the amendment than that, and then we could move to the GOP amendment.
Yeah, let's have Mr. Gehring provide a summary, please. Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, yes. So this is an amendment that has to do with the campaign reports that are filed by principal campaign committees and other types of committees. Under current law, the requirement is that the report disclose names, exact addresses, and other information about both contributors and vendors or other places to which contributions are either sent out from the campaign or are expended from the campaign. This would, instead, for the money that's going out of the campaign to another source, either contributing to another campaign committee or expending it for another purpose, the report would eliminate the requirement that the specific address be listed, and instead would require just that the city, state, and zip code of the recipients be listed. But as Representative Freiberg indicated, there's no change to the requirement that an address be listed for contributors to the campaign.
Okay, so who is offering the A12? Oh, okay. Chair Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would move that A12 be the amended, or amended to the A4. And basically, this includes and protects BPOUs and political committees by, instead of address, having it city, state, and zip code.
Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Co-Chair Quam, for bringing this forward. I think this makes sense. It would treat political committees, political funds, and party units consistent with the way candidates are treated. So I would encourage members to support it.
Okay, so to the A12, is there further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the A12 is adopted, amending the A4. We are back to the A4 as amended. Further discussion on the A4 as amended. Okay, so all in favor of the A4 as amended?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the A4 as amended has been adopted. Chair Freiberg moves the A5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A5 deals with candidate addresses on affidavits of candidacy. Would welcome any additional information if Mr. Gehring has any to provide.
Mr. Gehring, any further summaries?
Sure, Madam Chair, so under current law, candidates are allowed to request that their address be protected if they certify that they have a concern for their safety or there's an order for protection issued. This would just allow any candidate to request that their address be classified as private.
Is there member discussion on the A5? Okay. Any last words, Chair Freiberg?
I would encourage members' support.
All right, all in favor of the A5, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the A5 has been adopted. Chair Freiberg moves the A6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A6 deals with addresses on nominating petitions, which is another new area for this bill. So, and I'd welcome any comments Mr. Gehring has to offer.
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair and members, the A6 has to do with nominating petitions, as Chair Freiberg said. Nominating petitions are an alternate way of a candidate filing for office for candidates who aren't filing an affidavit of candidacy or were representing a specific political party. This just eliminates the requirement that they include their address on their petition.
Okay. Is there member discussion on the A6? Any last words?
I'd encourage members' support.
All right, all in favor of the A6, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the A6 is adopted. Chair Freiberg moves the A7.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A7 deals with data classification of street addresses on local government candidate reports and statements. So these are statements filed with local officials and not with the Campaign Finance Board. And I'd welcome any additional clarification Mr. Gehring has to offer.
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, I don't have anything to add beyond that. This is Chapter 211A, which is the local government campaign reporting chapter.
Okay. All in favor of the A7, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the A7 is adopted. Chair Freiberg moves the A8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A8 deals with retroactive redaction of existing reports filed by local government candidates. And again, I'd welcome any additional clarification Mr. Gehring might have to offer.
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, so this A8 provides a window of time during which local governments would be required to redact and remove reports that are existing on websites that have candidate addresses. Again, this applies only to local government candidates and the local officials who receive these reports. And that's it.
Is there member discussion on the A8? Okay, Chair Freiberg, any last words?
Encourage members to support it.
All in favor of the A8, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The A8 is adopted. Chair Freiberg moves the A9 in front of the committee.
Thank you. This one deals with, the A9 deals with retroactive redaction of existing reports filed with the Campaign Finance Board rather than local government candidates, and I'd welcome any clarification from Mr. Gehring.
Mr. Gehring?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is the same, largely the same as the previous amendment in terms of its intent. It's a little more structured, and it gives the Campaign Finance Board a priority order for doing this work, because there's a number of different types of reports and statements that they receive, and so this amendment would specify that order for redaction.
Thank you. Is there member discussion on the A9? Chair Freiberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd encourage members' support.
Okay. All in favor of the A9, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the A9 is adopted. Chair Freiberg?
Yeah, numerically, the next amendment would be the A11, but with Co-Chair Quam's agreement, I think we can set that one aside for the moment, because I think it's going to be superseded by the A14. I see Co-Chair Quam nodding, so I think the next one you might want to ask for is the A13.
Okay. Chair Freiberg moves the A13.
Oh, actually, I think how about Co-Chair Quam move this one?
Okay, Chair Quam moves A13 in front of the committee. Chair Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it basically takes care of a division making the IE disclosure a misdemeanor. In other words, it removes creating a criminal offense in this bill so that it wouldn't be going to those other committees. It still prohibits stuff, but we're not creating a misdemeanor.
Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and yes, thank you for bringing this forward, Co-Chair Quam. It is on a somewhat, I do think the change that this is deleting is a good change from a policy perspective, just to be clear. But it is on a slightly different topic, first of all, than the bill is intending to get at. So, and then Co-Chair Quam ably pointed out that because it has this criminal penalty in it, it would also likely need to go to the Public Safety Committee. So I'm in support of this, just to kind of streamline the intent, what the bill is working on. And then also, I do know there is likely language coming forward that deals with disclaimers on outdoor advertising that the Campaign Finance Board is going to be bringing. So since that's on that topic, I think when that comes forward, either as a bill or an amendment, that would probably be the more appropriate time to discuss the language that this amendment is deleting. So I'm in support of this amendment.
Thank you for the context, Chair Freiberg. Is there further member discussion on the A13? Okay, so all in favor of the A13, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, the A13 has been adopted. Chair Freiberg moves the A14.
How
Madam
about
Chair?
Co-Chair
Oh,
Quam move this
yes,
one?
okay. Chair Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to move the amendment A14 for inclusion. Basically, it is a clarification that allows for the heads of the caucus and both chambers to have access to the actual address, and they would not be publicly, they'd be prohibited from, passing that else around, but allowing those officials within our chambers the knowledge of the actual addresses. I'm not sure if the author wants me to go in more detail of the possible reasons why that's something to do, but we felt that having that leadership have fuller knowledge was appropriate.
Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Co-Chair Quam, for bringing this forward, and I do appreciate, I guess I should mention too, this, this is fairly late developing, so I'm open to waiving the amendment deadline on this so that this can be considered, because we do have a 24-hour deadline on this. So with Co-Chair Quam's agreement to doing that. And I do think this language is tightened up compared to the language of the A11. The A11 was, the A11 potentially referred to candidates and contributors, whereas this only deals with candidates. And it also places limits on the ability of caucus leaders to share the data. I'm not totally sure this language is necessary, but generally speaking, I do think this language is better than it is. Just seeing as I have a whole host of reasons I prepared here to talk about this, but just seeing as you kind of kept your remarks fairly brief there, I won't go into those, but I would like to continue working with you on this language, potentially modifying it at the next stop. Maybe I'll just get the fact that I do have some potential concerns with the language, but I think, just owing that we negotiate in good faith on it, it is tighter than it had been in the A11. I'm willing to accept this, put it on, and have it, and then potentially in the Judiciary Committee, if we find additional tweaks to the language, I think we can continue to work on it and potentially adopt some changes there.
Chair Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the bipartisan efforts that are probably pretty evident in this committee, because we haven't been going through the first through third degree back and forth. It's been fairly cooperative in our discussions. So I am fully available so that we can fine tune the language.
Thank you.
All right. Any last words on the A14? Okay, sorry. I had a list for member discussion in general, not on this. Apologies. So, but Chair Acom.
Thank you. I just have a clarifying question about the amendment. And so would each of the 4 leaders have access to addresses for all of the caucus candidates?
Chair Quam.
Madam Chair, the intent is that the caucus leader would have the information for their people. I think we can get into the fine tuning of the specific language, but the intent is to have this starting point moving with that. And I understand where you're going with this.
Chair Acom.
And so the intent is that, for example, the DFL House Caucus would just have the DFL candidate names, or would it be that caucus leader would have all of them?
Chair Quam.
The Senate would not have the House, and the House would not have the Senate, and there will be clarifying language of beyond that. Thank you.
Rep Greenman. Apologies. Rep Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is actually just to stand up on clarification, and it might be a question for Mr. Gearing. But since there are candidates that are not just legislative candidates covered by 10A, with this amendment, how does it treat candidates who, for some other office that is not covered by either of the caucuses?
Mr. Gearing.
Madam Chair, Representative Greenman, as drafted here, this would provide access to all candidate filings. It's not specific to legislative offices, but as Chair Quam said, the intent may be different than that and might need some tweaks going forward.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the work that's being done. I think just making sure, when we say candidates, we oftentimes put ourselves at the center of the conversation, but there's lots of candidates. So just making sure we're accomplishing the intent and thinking about all the other candidates that have to file that have nothing to do with our caucuses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So the intent of the bill, or the intent of the amendment rather, is that, again, just to sort of get specific about it, the DFL caucus leader in the House would have access to addresses for every candidate running for the Minnesota House. And the Republican leader in the House would have access to the address for every candidate running for the Minnesota House. Am I understanding that correctly?
Chair Quam.
The intent is that the leadership in the House would be aware of the addresses for the members of the House, and there are several different reasons why that might be, especially, considering, the multitude of different things going on. But the feeling is that we should have leadership available to be able to have and review information, because we don't necessarily know every possible reason, but leadership has earned the right to a lot of accessibility that members and the public do not have, and this would be maintaining that accessibility for the leadership in each chamber.
Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to make sure I understood what the bill is. I don't read it that way, but I will put my trust in the chairs of this committee that it will get to what I think you are trying to get to. So I wanted to make sure I understood it. Thank you.
All right. Representative Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. and Chair Freiberg. I'm just trying to get at an issue that happened in the 2024 election in District 40B, where we had a candidate supposedly not, or allegedly not living in the district, and his opponent was able to investigate that and find that out. So I think my question is to Mr. Gehring, perhaps. This amendment or this bill as amended, if we adopt this amendment, and if this bill is signed in the language, would that have prevented that from happening, an opponent investigating on whether or not his opponent lived in the district?
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, Representative Davis, nothing in this amendment would change the ability of an opponent to file a complaint that someone doesn't live in the district, and that's sort of a separate process determining residence that would be a court proceeding. This would be a potential data point that someone might use to determine whether someone is outside of their district or not, but that's that determination really is a separate process from what this amendment is.
Representative Davis.
So, Mr. Chair, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Or Chair Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The intent is to prevent the leadership in the chamber from being surprised. That would be one effect of the intent.
Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Quam, Representative Davis. Yes, this has been, during my time in the legislature, there have been 2 individuals elected to the position of state representative from either party who ran into some issues in this area. And, I didn't want to get into my issues with this amendment. That's why I would appreciate the statement, Chair Quam, that you would continue to working on this. I'm not totally convinced this would have prevented what happened there. It does still depend on, I know in both cases there were efforts by individuals to, stake out the house or the the house in the case that happened longer ago, the apartment in the case that happened more recently. I don't know that that's a great system. I do think there are other ways that this could be verified. I'm not sure party leaders are necessarily the best case. I mean, in some ways, it seems like it's more practical to address this concern at the kind of verification of candidacy stage rather than sharing candidate addresses with caucus leaders. We did, in fact, pass a law in 2024 that could have addressed the residency issue, and that came up in the 2024 election. Unfortunately, that law didn't take effect until after the filing deadline, so it didn't apply in that case. But the candidate would have had to change his address on his license or set up to pay bills at the new address. So there are actually provisions in law that we haven't used yet, but I think will take effect this session. Regardless of all that, I certainly think if there are ways we can prevent this from happening, I would like to keep working with Chair Quam just to make sure that the language that we have is the most effective way of doing that. I think having this in there does kind of like flag this as an issue that we can continue to work on. And so I look forward to continuing to do so.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there further discussion on the A14? Okay, so all in favor of A14, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, the A14 is adopted. Okay, so the A11 is not going to be offered. So according to my list, I think we've considered all of the amendments that we had prepared. And now we're going to move to the member discussion portion of the bill as amended. So Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm be glad to hear from other members first, and then I can
Okay.
close.
I just know you wanted to get the bill in the shape that you wanted it, so, yeah.
I appreciate members' indulgence here. I don't know, I don't know if that was the best situation, but, this is how the sausage gets made.
That's right. So any further discussion on the bill as amended? Representative Davis.
Forgive me for not paying attention earlier, Madam Chair. What are we doing with this bill?
Yes, the motion is to move the bill as amended to the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further, Representative McDonald?
Thank you, Chair. Chair Freiberg, once it gets into the judiciary, is your intention to have this go to the general register or a larger bill within the judiciary?
Chair Freiberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative McDonald. It's not totally up to me. I suspect the co-chairs of the Judiciary Committee will have thoughts about where the bill should go. I mean, certainly anything we can do to get, I do think this addresses an important issue. Certainly anything we can do to get this done quickly, it would be fine by me, but I understand if there are, if the co-chairs of the Judiciary Committee have some plan as well. So I guess, I don't know. I spent so much, honestly, Chair McDonald, I spent so much time trying to figure out all these amendments last night. I didn't even think that far ahead. I just kind of wanted to get today over with.
I think there's also discussion of, possibly also public safety maybe, right? Chair Freiberg?
No, because we
we're not doing
adopted
that.
the
Okay.
Quam amendment, that should not be necessary.
All right, very good. Representative McDonald? Okay. Further discussion on House File 3663 as amended. Closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, for working through this. I do think there were some good suggestions that came out of the Senate, so I wanted to give those kind of due consideration as part of this. I certainly, after the events of the summer, I certainly think our, address privacy is important, but this, the Senate amendments kind of broadened it beyond that as well to include people like donors and candidates. So, I think this addresses an important issue of safety of both us and the public. So I'm glad to keep this moving. I appreciate members' robust discussion on the amendments in the bill and would welcome your support to move it to the Judiciary Committee. And with that, I guess I will renew my motion that House File 3363 as amended be re-referred to the Judiciary Committee.
Chair Freiberg renews his motion to re-refer House File 3363 as amended to the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails and the bill is on its way to Judiciary.